Alright, so we are back today with our part 3 of this tulip sweater tutorial, and what we're going to be doing in this part 3 is we're going to be taking this shoulder strap that we created in part 2, and we're going to go ahead and connect that to our back. I've got a piece of white paper so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So we're going to connect that back there to the back panel, and we are also going to sew up the sides of our sleeve, which if you watched part 2 and you check down at the description, I listed the sleeve count, the number of chains you need to start your sleeve. And these are suggested counts, and there's some info down there for you, but you're going to use part 1 tutorial to do the sleeve as well. You're just going to use the number of chains that I've listed down with your size, and you're going to do the same exact stitch pattern. So you will use part 1 to create the panel that is your sleeve. The sleeves are essentially just very long rectangles. So we're going to sew those up in this tutorial. We're going to sew this to the back panel right here. Let me point. And we are going to sew up our sides. So when you're finished with one side, you're going to go over to the other side and repeat the same exact thing on the other side so that you end up with a finished sweater. So I'm going to go ahead and mount my camera up, and we're going to get started. We're going to start with attaching this panel right here, this little shoulder panel, to our back panel of our sweater, and then we're going to move forward with the attaching of the sleeves, lining everything up, and we'll go over all of that in this tutorial. It'll be fairly short since you have done all the hard work, since you have made your body panels, your sleeves, all following the part 1. Then you've done this little shoulder panel or shoulder strap in part 2, and now we're ready to put the sweater together. So one moment and I'll be right back. Alright, so we're back, and I've got my shoulder strap right here. So this is my front panel here in the front, and this is the back panel. And I have lined up taking the corner of my front panel and matching it to the corner of my back panel. And hopefully you guys can see that. I know this is awfully dark yarn to be looking at in a tutorial, but if you go like this is how I like to hold it when I'm working, because this helps me stay lined up, because we want to make sure that we're not stretching it out, and we want to make sure that we are not letting it get off center. So if you look right here, your panels, even though this is just a short little panel for the shoulder strap, it should pretty much line up with what you've got going on the back side. So we want to go ahead and get started. I'm going to hold mine like this so that you guys can hopefully see what I'm doing. You can do this with a yarn needle. You do not have to use your crochet hook. I'm going to use the crochet hook because I've mentioned before that you can do a single crochet or a slip stitch to attach this. So I'm going to show the slip stitch right here. So I've got my yarn already attached to my project. It was the working yarn. And I'm just going to go over here. So I'm technically in the corner on this side. So I'm on the corner. And I'm going to go over here to this corner. We want to get in the very first stitch on the corner. And I'm going to grab my yarn, it's hidden back here, and I'm going to bring it around to where I can grab it. And you're just going to grab your yarn if you're doing the slip stitch and pull it through the loop. And we want to pull that down kind of tight so that it tightens that up. Let me do that again. There we go. And then you're going to work a slip stitch into each and every stitch on down the side. So you want to make sure you're getting in one stitch right there. Come up closer. You're going to get in one stitch on this side, and then you're going to go into the corresponding stitch on the other side. And that is how you're going to grab your yarn, and you're going to pull through both of the loops that you just went into on the project, and then you're going to pull through the loop that's on your hook. So you're just going to continue on down. I'm going into the next stitch now, right there, and I'm going to go into the corresponding one on the other side. I am doing the back loops in my case. You can do the front loops, whatever you choose, or go through both if that's what you prefer to do. There's really not a wrong or a right way to do this. The main thing is we want to just join these two panels together. So this is your shoulder strap that's going to your back panel. So we're just going to continue on down until you have met the end of your shoulder strap, and then you will just bind off and you'll sew in that end. So you're going to continue on down just in the same manner. You can do this, like I said, with a yarn needle and some more of your yarn, and you can work just on down until you are finished and you've got everything sewn up for the shoulder. Alright, so now we're back, and what I've got here is my shoulder strap is now attached to my back panel, and I'm here at the very end, so I just wanted to stop and let you guys take a look at that, and then I'm going to show you how I like to bind off. So that is what you end up having if you've done the slip stitch all the way down to attach the front panel shoulder strap to the back panel. So what I like to do is I've done my last slip stitch over here, and I'm going to just go ahead and knot. That's what I prefer to do. So I'm going to do a chain 1, and then I'm going to go back in. I'm going to do a single crochet because I just want to make sure I'm nice and tightly bound off right here. And then I chain up 2. That's where I clip my yarn, and then I go ahead and pull this on through. Then I cinch it down. So that's how I go about doing that. You can sew in ends if you prefer. It's really up to you. Again, it's one of those things, there's no right or wrong way. So we're going to go ahead and get started with step 2 on this, which is we're going to do our sleeves. On our sleeves, before we even get started with those, you're going to want to lay out your panel nice and flat, and you're going to want to match up your ends. So this is the bottom edge of my project. Alright, so we are going to go ahead and work on our sleeves now. So this is my sleeve panel, and there's a few things I want to tell you guys about the sleeves. So the main thing I want to point out is the direction that your stitches is moving in actually matters. If you do not want the direction on the sleeve to change from the way that your panel is currently laid out, which the way that the panel works is when you have it on, this part right here is facing upward. So this is what's going to be towards your neck and everything. This is the direction it's moving. So like this. So if you do your sleeve and you want to have your sleeve in the same exact direction as the back and front panel, you're going to want to do a final row 1, like new row 1 that we did in the part 1. You're going to want to do that across here so that you have a straight edge to use, so that when you fold your sleeve, it will be folded like this in this direction, and it will attach to the body. Right now, it's going to dip in here, and that's going to create a problem for you. So you want to make sure that you have a flat edge. So you're going to do that new row 1 right here. For me, I actually wanted my piece to have the scalloped edge on it at my wrist. So I have left mine without the row 1, and I'm going to have my direction change. And that's exactly how it was on the one that I showed in my podcast that initiated me doing this tutorial, the little red one that I had on. That one is got the sleeves just like this. This is the bottom where you started your sleeve. So this is your starting chain. So this is where I attached my sleeves even on that particular sweater. No one has pointed that out, that it suddenly changes direction. But I know for some of you that would be a huge issue, so that's why I'm bringing that up. So you're going to be taking your sleeve panel in whatever direction you want to attach it in. Just make sure that you have that flat row 1 right here where it has the double crochet here in the center, so that it goes just straight across. You do not want to leave this with the scalloped edge and try to attach it to your project. So if you're unsure of what I'm talking about, you're going to refer back to part 1, and you're going to look for the split in the video, or I'm sorry, the notation in the video for the new row 1. When you see it again, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and it's how you ended your back panel. You ended your back panel straight across so that you had something straight to attach to. So that first panel you made, that was your back panel. You made sure to end with the row 1 here instead of having row 5. This is row 5 right here. Instead of having row 5 being the ending of that panel, because it doesn't give you anything to work with. So hopefully that is making sense. So I'm going to go ahead and attach or sew up the side of the sleeve. So just make sure that when you go to do this, you are paying close attention to the direction that this pattern is moving in. Because right here, let me show you the way mine is going to be. When I have this on, the tulip part is going to be facing downward. So this right here is going to be going down towards my wrist. So if I put this on my arm right now, to give you an idea, I'm going to attach mine, and it is going to sit just like this at my wrist. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. For some of you, this is, since this direction changes and the tulip's now facing down instead of being turned up like the rest of the panels, which is what it looks like when it's going in the panel direction right here. This is how your panels, when you're standing there, your panels, the flower, the tulip is facing upward in the correct direction for a flower, essentially. So keep that in mind when you go to attach these, that you are not attaching it in a direction that's going to bother you if you're really particular about making sure it stays consistent. But I'm telling you guys, nobody's ever noticed, and I just personally wanted the scalloped edge on my wrist. So that's how I'm doing mine. So we're going to take our shoulder or our sleeve panel, and we're going to go ahead and begin attaching it. You can do this with a yarn needle, or not attaching it, we're going to sew it up. So you can do this with a yarn needle, or you can do this with a slip stitch or a single crochet. If you do the single crochet, you're definitely going to have an inside of your sweater and an outside of your sweater. So if you're doing it that way, make sure that you keep all of those seams on one side. So if you have it turned, you don't want to turn it inside and out and get mixed up when you're constructing it. So you want to keep it all turned the same exact way, do everything, all the connections the same way, and then you would turn it back outside. So right here is my panel. I've just taken this long rectangle that we created, and that's all it is, nice long rectangle, and I'm going to fold it up and I'm going to match corner to corner. So I'm taking my corner up here, and I'm going to sew all the way down the side. And in my case, I'm actually going to do a slip stitch because that's what I'm preferring on these, or I'm sorry, a single crochet. So I'm going to do a single crochet. You can use your yarn needle to sew this up, or you can do a slip stitch, whatever you prefer. I'm just trying to show for my beginners some of the ways that you can do this. So for some of you, you don't actually need me to show you what to do on this part. So you can go ahead and fast forward and move on to where we are attaching the sleeve if you do not need any help learning how to sew up the sides or seam up the sleeve. So we're gonna go ahead and insert that, and I know you guys can hear that train, and I do apologize, it just won't stop going by. It's been holding me up for quite some time. So we're going to go ahead and just pretend like it's not there. So I'm going to pull up my yarn, and I'm going to do a single crochet, and I'm going to do this all the way down, going into at least one loop on each side, just like that. Hopefully you guys can see. You want to make sure that you're grabbing a loop from each side, and you're going to pull through and then pull through two, doing a single crochet in my case. Either way, no matter how you're deciding to seam this up, you want to make sure that you are getting a loop from each side, because we want to end up with a closed little panel so that we have formed a sleeve. So we're going to make it into a tube essentially. So you're going to go on down all the way down your project. If you are doing the single crochet, the main tip I can give you is don't let that get too tight. You don't want to start to pull your project in at any point. So that is what my seam is going to look like, if you guys can see that. I don't know if you can. That's what my seam is going to look like on the inside of my project. So you're just going to continue on down. I'm grabbing a back loop and a back loop on the other side, corresponding stitch, one on each side, and just doing a loose single crochet. So I'm not doing it too loose, obviously, because you want it to hold it together, but you just don't want to tighten down your stitch very much. So you're going to continue on down, and then when you have your sleeve all seamed up on the side, you're going to meet back up with me, and we will go ahead and do the attaching it to the body, because that is our next step. We don't want to sew up our sides until we have got our sleeve on. so that we can keep everything nice and even on our project. And we'll be right back with that. All right, so we're back and you've got your sleeve all seamed up here on the side. Hopefully you guys can see that. I know this is worst yarn to choose for doing a tutorial, but this is what I had enough of to do this particular. I didn't want to have to go buy more. I'm out of space, so I need to use up what I have. So here we are, and I have, like I said, I chose that I wanted the scalloped edge on the end of my sleeve. So for me, I'm going to be turning mine in the direction where my flowers are now moving downward. They're upside down essentially. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to lay it up against this at the shoulder. But before I do that, that's where we have to go back to the matching it up. We want to make absolutely sure that you're taking your corner from your back panel and your corner from your front panel, and you're meeting them right there at the corner and matching them up. Your shoulder strap that you created is part of your length now. So it's made this piece longer. And so you want to make sure that you line everything up. This is my shoulder. And if you can see the body over here, I keep bumping my cord, I apologize. If you can see the body over here to this side, we want to make sure that this shoulder really is a shoulder. So you're going to line it up just like I've just done, matching the corner. And then that's going to allow this to go into its natural fold. So when you look on the back side where your panel is, your seam is here. Now keep in mind, for me, if you can see that, I've got this lump right here, but this is going to be the inside of my sweater. When I'm done, I'm going to turn everything inside out, and that is going to be hidden inside the sweater. So no one's ever going to see this. So that is how it lays out, and that's one of the reasons why I did that, so that you guys would hopefully be able to see that on camera, to see where this shoulder strap actually brings you down right here. So it's really important that you make sure that you are lined up here at the end now that you've done the shoulder. So you want to make sure you're lined up, and in my case, I'm going to be leaving 5-inch slits here on the side. So the first thing you're going to want to do before you attach your sleeve is you're going to want to grab a stitch marker, preferably a locking one. Hopefully you guys can see that there. And you're going to want to measure up from the bottom corner up, and you're going to mark right there where you're going to have your slit end. If you're not going to do the slit, it's really important, if you are doing a plus size, to leave the slit, because this is kind of like a figure hugging piece. So we need this extra slit if you've got a booty like I do. And so I don't know how any other way to explain that. If you got junk in your trunk, you're going to need these slits to help this not be so tight around that area. So we're going to go ahead and mark right there for me. You guys can measure and mark wherever you choose. You can have higher slit or a little bit lower slit. 5-inch seemed to work great for the sizes that I worked up. So I'm going to, that's going to help hold me together so that my piece doesn't get out of alignment. And then I'm going to make sure still that my shoulder up here is aligned just like I need it to be. And you can go ahead and add another stitch marker about midway up your panel so that nothing shifts on you. For me, I'm not going to need that because I'm a pro at this one now. I've had this thing together and apart several times. So we're going to take our sleeve that we created, and you're going to make sure that that seam where you sewed it up is facing downward. You want it to go downward. You don't want to find the seam right here, and you don't want your seam up here, because then it's going to show on your project. If you face it downward, it's going to be basically lined up with the inside of your arm. And so when you're standing there or whatever, you're not going to really see that seam. So the next thing I want to suggest is grab yourself a needle and thread, or I'm sorry, the needle and yarn. You want a yarn needle, and you want to use the same yarn that you've been using. You're not going to want to stitch up around here. At least I found that to be the case. I suggest using the yarn needle and some of your yarn to go ahead and join on along here. And we're going to have to do that all the way around. And because this right here is now a tube, And this right here is a flat piece. As you join, it's going to help bring that shape in. So what I like to do, that's why I like to do the yarn needle. Fighting with this, going around in a circle, in a tube shape with the hook and everything is a little bit difficult for me and very difficult to show you guys on camera. So you're just going to go ahead and grab your yarn. Make sure you stay all lined up on your project. That's what the stitch markers are good for, is they keep you from shifting things, because once you stitch this on, it's going to be difficult to make any changes. You're going to be cutting very carefully or fighting with some yarn, so you don't want to do that. So go ahead and grab your yarn needle, and I like to double whatever the circumference or whatever the length that I'm doing. I like to take double the amount of yarn in order to, when I'm going to clip and do some something like a stitching something up with a yarn needle. So keep that in mind. You don't want to use too short of a piece, but if you do, it's not the end of the world. You can always bind off and then stitch back just a few stitches and start again with another piece. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my needle and I'll be right back. Alright, so now we're back, and what I've got going on here is I've put in some white paper to kind of help you guys see what we're doing here. But in this case, when you're doing your sleeve and attaching it to the body, you want to make sure that you can leave it laying flat. That'll help keep everything lined up the way you need it to, so that everything stays just so it basically stays exactly where you want your sleeve to end up, where it's going to start and where it's going to end, because you don't want to shift anything. So what we're going to do is I've went ahead and I've done my first little loop with my yarn needle, and I always leave the tail, and then I'm going to knot it when I get around to that, back around here. So I'm going to start right here in the armpit area is where I suggest you start. And then from there, you're just going to grab one loop on each side. And I'm picking up back loop to back loop in this case. And you're just going to go ahead and do a simple stitch all the way around. You do not want to pull it super tight because you don't want to draw anything in. And I don't know if my paper or anything's really helping you guys see what I'm doing here. But let me try lowering my camera real quick. Alright, so we've got that down lower. Hopefully that's helping a little bit. But we're going to go ahead and just go back loop to back loop. And you want to make sure that you move from each side, one on each side, just like that. And you want to pull on through, and don't pull real tight. And you're going to continue on around, going in each stitch all the way around your sleeve and your body. And as you get up to the top, you're going to have to flip your project over and continue on the other side so that you can meet up down here at the armpit essentially. So we're going to go ahead and finish that up. All you have to do, one in each stitch, working all the way down and around, and then you will connect down there at the armpit area. So hopefully you guys can work this out and go on around, and we're going to go ahead and meet back up in a moment, and I'm going to show you real briefly what we're going to do here on the side, and then you'll be finished with your project and sewing in your ends in no time. Alright, so now I have finished going around all the way around my sleeve, and now I've got enough yarn on here that I can go ahead and at least start on my side. So all you're going to do after you've done your last stitch on your sleeve is you're going to go ahead and move right over here to the other side, and you're going to begin to go down your side. Make sure before you start that you are still lined up. You have maybe had to turn this over in most cases so that you could finish sewing the other side of your sleeve. So just make sure, if you didn't position stitch markers down along the side, make sure that you're still lined up. And then you're just going to simply do the same exact thing that you've been doing. You're going to go one in each stitch. You can do front loop or back loop, whichever you prefer, but you're just going to make sure you're getting one loop from each side, and you're going to continue all the way down until you meet with your stitch marker for the slit that's going to be in the side. So let me get in camera so you can see what I'm doing here. So you're just going to go one in each side. And that's my panel right here, front and back. I don't know if you can see, but you're just going to go one loop in each side minimum, and you're going to sew it up all the way down until you meet with the stitch marker that's going to be the slit. And then you're going to repeat the same process over there on the other side, connecting your shoulder strap adding your shoulder after you've lined everything up, and sewing up on the shoulder. Sewing the shoulder on is what I'm trying to say, or the sleeve on. I keep calling it a shoulder. We're going to sew all of that up, and then you're going to work down your sides at the very end of your project. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. I hope that it has made sense to you. I'm going to be doing a podcast to talk a little bit more about this project and some different tips and tricks that I can give you for adjusting the size. And thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment below.